I wasn't going to make a video about this because every time I make videos about these incidences that are happening in schools across America, YouTube always suppresses my channel. I have to abide by a different set of rules than any other YouTuber I know. Other YouTubers get rewarded for covering certain topics, whereas I get penalized. Mainly because I don't go along with the mainstream narratives and I'm not afraid to share my own opinions. But when I came across this information, I already knew immediately, hey, if I make a video about this, my channel is going to be suppressed for another 6 months or so. There's a reason why I've been sitting at 113,000 subscribers for months. It's because YouTube has been censoring and suppressing my content ever since I was talking about those Haitians in Springfield a few months ago. So every couple of months I put out a video or I'll cover a topic that gets me in trouble, and I know this is going to get me in trouble, but it's worth it because I think we're starting to see a bigger picture here when it comes to these kids who are being radicalized and indoctrinated, sometimes brainwashed, and are going into their schools and committing heinous acts, harming themselves and harming others, unaliving people. You get it. I have to use the code words here. But it turns out, I think there may be some sort of network that's going on right now where these kids are all in communication with each other, plotting on doing horrible things at their schools. It's no longer, the lone wolf type of scenario. No, these kids are connecting on Facebook groups, on social media groups, and different online platforms, and they're plotting and planning and encouraging each other to do horrible things. In fact, two of the last recent, I hate having to use these buzzwords, but two of the last recent kids who went and did something horrible at their schools, it turns out that they have a connection. It turns out that they were in communication with each other. And I don't think it's just them. I think there's a whole entire network here. And it's definitely concerning. And every single parent should be aware of this. If you're a parent, or if you know a parent, you need to share this video with them. It's very important that this information gets out there, because not enough people are talking about it. But it looks like there is a network where all of these weirdos that are committing these heinous acts in schools, they're all talking, communicating, and I don't know if there may be some 3-letter agencies that are involved with these networks. It's getting really, really concerning. But I want to go ahead and dive into this article and let's find out a little bit more about what's going on here. Madison and Nashville school attackers appear to have crossed paths in online extremist communities. Moments before 15-year-old Natalie Rupnow opened fire inside of her Madison, Wisconsin school, unaliving 2 people and herself last month, a social media account believed to be hers posted a photograph on X showing someone sitting in a bathroom stall and flashing a hand gesture that has become a symbol for white supremacy. As news about the shooting broke, another X user responded and said, "Live stream it." Researchers now believe that the second account who said live stream it belonged to 17-year-old Solomon Henderson, who police say walked into his high school cafeteria in Nashville, Tennessee on Wednesday and fired 10 shots, unaliving 1 classmate and then himself. Archives of another X account linked to him show that he posted a similar photo to Rupnow's in his final moments. While there isn't any hardcore evidence that Rupnow and Henderson plotted their attacks together, researchers who have tracked their social media activity say that the two teenagers were active in the same online networks that glorify people who do horrible things in schools. Across various social media platforms, the networks trade hateful memes alongside hateful literature. They exchange tips on how to effectively commit attacks, and they encourage each other and one another to carry out their own attacks. The researchers had been tracking these networks for months as part of work looking into growing online extremist networks that have proliferated across gaming and chatting social media platforms that they believe are radicalizing young people to commit horrible acts of violence inside of schools. The researchers' analysis found only a few instances in which Rupnow and Henderson appear to interact directly. But in the hours, days, and weeks that followed the Madison event, Henderson appears to have been fixated on Rupnow. He boasted on X that Rupnow and him were mutuals, a common internet term for following each other, and shared another post that said, "I used to be mutuals with someone who is now a real school power." A Madison Police Department spokesperson said the agency knows Rupnow was very active on social media, and it is just starting to receive and review documents from tech companies. The Nashville police said they had nothing further to add beyond their previous statements. Rupnow and Henderson each had multiple X accounts, the extremism researchers found out. At the time of her attack, Rupnow followed just 13 other users. 2 of those accounts have been linked to Henderson. In November, Rupnow shared a post from Henderson which appeared to wish a happy Veterans Day to the man who unalived more than a dozen people at University of Texas in Austin in 1966. After the Madison attack, someone wrote to Henderson and others on X saying that one of their buddies may have blanked up a school. Henderson told another user, "I barely know her," and said he had never exchanged private messages with her. Later, in a 51-page screed that Nashville police are examining, he emulated and praised several past attackers, including Rupnow, and said, "I have connections with some of them only loosely via online messaging platforms." After Rupnow's shooting, Henderson called her a saintress, using a term common in the networks, and posted or reshared posts about her dozens of times, celebrating her racist, genocidal online persona and the fact that she had taken action. On one platform, he used a photograph of her as his profile picture. In his writings, he said he scrawled Rupnow's name and those of other perpetrators on his weapon and gear. I want to pause right there. Because, oh boy, this is much worse than I thought when I initially dived into this information. And it's just very clear here now that these people who are committing these acts across the country in schools across the country, yeah, sure, not all of them are connected to this network, but a lot of them are. We now know of 2 for a fact, and even more, about a half a dozen kids who carried out heinous attacks at their schools. We now know they're interacting on these platforms together. They have groups where the discussion, like some people have online groups to talk about knitting and quilt, and stuff like that, right? Sometimes people have online groups to talk about true crime, or they have online groups to talk about cars. There's online groups for these kids where they come in and discuss and plan and plot to do horrible things to their classmates at their schools. And they idolize and praise people who have done this in the past. This is very, very scary stuff. And it's the first time in history that it's being acknowledged that there may be a connection here between kids that are doing this stuff. And Lord knows how many kids are involved in this network. And I guarantee you the FBI and the CIA got their hands all over this too. And see, that's why YouTube's going to get mad at me about this video. But let's go ahead and dive back in before I say something that gets my channel deleted. The online networks the two teenagers inhabited have an array of influences, ideologies, and aesthetics. In this online world, the currency that buys clout is violence. This violence often involves children and teenagers, harming other kids and teenagers, some through doxing or encouraging self-harm, others like Rucknow and Henderson by committing mass attacks in the non-virtual world. This network is best described as an online subculture that celebrates violent attacks and radicalizes young people into committing these acts. Many of the individuals involved in this network are minors, and we'd like to see intervention to give them the help and support they need for their own safety, as well as those around them. Listen, when you find out your kid or a kid is part of one of these online forums plotting stuff like this, you don't need to get them the help they need. You need to put their ass in jail. I don't care if you're 14, 13. I don't care if you're a confused little kid. I have no sympathy for that. I have no sympathy for anyone who plans and plots to harm other children in their schools. And that's part of the problem right there. Having sympathy for these people. That's why these people look at themselves as victims. And every time someone does something, it's, oh, well, he was bullied in school. They were mean to him. And no, that's not an excuse. We got to stop empowering these type of people because you're encouraging this behavior by feeding into this, oh, victim mentality nonsense. We don't need to give these kids the help they need. We need to lock these kids up and throw away the key. Because if you're evil enough to plot on doing stuff like this when you're 13, 14, 15 years old, then you're never going to be a good-hearted, kind-hearted adult. That's the reality of the situation. When you spot problems like this, nip it in the bud early before they end lives, because that's what they're going to do one way or the other eventually. But let's go ahead and go forward. Members of some of these communities, including Telegram, 764, and Calm, have engaged in activities online and offline that have led to convictions for possessing child materials. And listen, I can't even read through a lot of this stuff. A lot of these communities are also sharing child images of horrible things. Let's just put it like that. So there's a lot of that stuff being spread around these same communities as well. And that right there kind of lets you know what I was saying, that these communities where these young kids are congregating and talking about doing these crazy things, it's not just kids in there. There's adults in there that are influencing these kids' minds, adults that are pretending to be kids. And apparently they're spreading images of children doing, it's a sick world that we live in. It is a sick world that we live in, and unfortunately, we can't even talk about the problem. Because if I talk about the problem, no one's going to see me talk about the problem if I acknowledge the actual problem and say the actual words. That's how censored we are on these platforms. People are allowed to go online and do all of this horrible stuff, but if you call it out and point it out and alert people to it, your videos will be demonetized or they'll be suppressed in the algorithm. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. But this is the battle that I wake up and fight every day. This is the battle that you guys wake up and fight every day. The battle over information. And it's crazy that evil, horrible people are able to use the internet freely to do whatever the hell they want, obviously. But people like me and people like you that want to spread the truth and raise awareness about these problems, we're suppressed and we're silenced. Were their voices silenced? No, they're all online talking about doing horrible things in their high school. Oh, we're going to go unalive this person, unalive that person. That's totally fine. Y'all can do that. But oh God, if Cinema Shogun talks about the issue, oh God, we got to suppress his channel for 6 months. It's insane, man. I am so just beyond frustrated at how everything's just been going lately in this society. Because the biggest problems that we have, we're not allowed to have conversations about those problems. So after hearing all of this information, the number one question that's on my mind, the number one question that should be on everyone's mind is, why isn't this a bigger deal? Why is this not a bigger news story? You know, every time an incident happens at one of these schools, there's all of these political debates over, should we be able to own guns? Should we do this? Do we need armed teachers? Why didn't you lock this door in the school? There's all of these debates and everyone flinging mud at each other on either side. But here we have what should be the biggest news story in America, and it's being treated as if it's an afterthought. It's being brushed to the side. The fact that your kids are going to school with other kids that are part of a network discussing how they're going to harm your children, how they're going to carry out these heinous attacks at schools near you. And I'm telling you right now, this is sick and twisted stuff. They even assign scores to these events. So if you unalive this many people, you get a higher score than the person that unalives, this amount of people. And they're literally trying to one-up each other. Hey, I bet I can unalive this many people in my school cafeteria. I bet I can unalive more people than you. And then they're going out there and they're committing these acts. And you would think that it's not connected. Listen, I know that a lot of these kids that are doing this stuff, I know that they idolize, like the Columbine people and stuff like that. I already knew that, but I didn't know that there was such a connected online network where these kids were just plotting and planning. It's really weird, but there is an online community for just about everything out there. So I guess it's not that surprising. But what is surprising is that no one's really talking about this at all. When you would think that this should be a priority. Your kids' health, your kids' well-being, their safety should be your number one priority. But here in America, as Americans, we're more worried about Blake Lively or whoever the hell that is, and these random celebrities' lives and their drama. We're more worried about that than what our kids are going through. And then in a couple of days, because listen, every few days, every week or two, we have one of these events. In a few days or a week or so, when something bad happens at another school, everyone's going to scratch their heads. You're going to see the same debates, and no one's going to acknowledge the information that we just unpacked in this video. But you know what? You can't save the world. You can't save anyone. All I can do is try to inform as many people as possible. And unfortunately, YouTube makes that very hard for me because they don't put my videos in the algorithm. They don't share my videos. If you're watching this video, chances are it's only because you had on all of the notifications for this channel. And even then, they don't even notify half the people of when I upload. But like I said, this is very important stuff. Spread the word while you can before it's too late. And I think we need to start, trying to nip this in the bud. You need to take out these platforms that are allowing this to go down. But for now, let me know your thoughts about all of this down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all very soon in the next one.